Welcome, everybody, to Astrology Unplugged. I'm Rick DiClemente with StarSelf.com, and this is a crazy night because people are, I think, stressed out from too much news and from Halloween goofiness, and some people are cooking weird stuff in the background, and some people have weird hats on, so I'm going to put up a disclaimer. I'm not responsible for what happens outside of my box. So if you do something weird in your box, that's up to you. And I have the button that says stop the video. This is a fireside chat without the fire. Today is episode 56. And tonight we're going to talk about a lot of what Manafort is up to in his chart. I did the chart on the New York City maniacal terrorist, and I didn't have the birth time, so I was not satisfied with what I was looking at. But tonight, if you've seen the pre-release, tonight we're going to be looking at, I decided to start with the chart of Mitch McConnell, which is a fascinating chart. Then we're going to do Kushner, and then Manafort's chart is really fascinating. Mueller's chart, Robert Mueller, is pretty interesting. And then a little interest in the Carter Page's chart, Roger Stone and Donald Trump Jr., because these are major players going on with all this Russia investigation. So I want to start right in and tell you that inadvertently I backed up through my research through the last several years. I backed up into the fact that the most consistent thing with politicians' chart is not what Michelle Gauquelin found out in his research. It's the fact that they have a plethora of planets in Taurus. Now, Taurus planets are not going to get you there because Taurus planets don't by themselves think on a community level or a broader scale. They're very Hobbit-like. They're very content in their own Hobbit hole. But just like with John sitting here, who's a Taurus, John has many outer planets that drive him towards the concerns of others, the concerns of a larger scale. So what I'm finding with the Taurus planets is these people have Sag or they have Aquarius in them that gets them socially interested, but the Taurus is what allows them to keep up with the grind. Keep up with the BS, keep up with the slow-moving wheels of bureaucracy. And that's the thing I find so fascinating. Sun in the 11th house, yes, that's for sure. Sun in the 9th house, Sun in the 10th house, those things are sure. But let's start with McConnell's chart, and we're going to try to bring some light to it. This is not a course of A to Z. Each week we talk about different elements of astrology, trying to shine the light upon this and that. So I will pop up in the first chart, which is Mitch McConnell's. And there he is, you can see it. So this is a noon chart because we do not have a birth time, so we use noon. I'm going to take my time here because it's going to explain a lot of things to you. There you see is 4 planets in Taurus. But he's a Pisces. You can just about forget the fact that he's a Pisces. I mean, the Pisces qualities are almost invisible. So the Pisces qualities might be what gives him the interest to get involved originally with politics, but the Taurus is why he's so stubborn. He just sticks to it. And how many times does he try one bill after the same bill, after the last bill, after the last bill, after the last bill? He just doesn't give up, doesn't stop pushing. Those are Taurus qualities. We also see the Taurus qualities in his counterpart. What's the lady's name, head of the Democrats? She was? John?
Pelosi.
Pelosi, yeah.
Pelosi.
Yeah, hi, Karen. Pelosi's Aries with a lot of Taurus. No, Wasserman is the dark side of Libra, without a doubt, especially after today and all the revelations of what happened to Bernie. Don't get me started there. I'm going to change this name here. So let's go back to the chart of the news on Bernie is they pretty much have proven that he was set up and didn't have a chance to win, and the election was crooked. It's all look shocked. Okay. Now you'll notice that his sun does square. No, it doesn't square. The sun squares Uranus. Okay. He's got the Mercury, Venus in Aquarius, and they're opposite Pluto. But what's interesting about this, here's my interpretation of this. You got to be very careful when you do a chart, especially without a birth time, because other people have these similar aspects, and you don't want people feeling bad because you notice one character has a dark side. It doesn't mean everybody with these aspects are bad. But you notice that he's got the Mercury, Venus in Aquarius, which gives him the interest in working at the group level, the humanitarian level. But notice carefully across the zodiac is Pluto and Chiron in Leo. So this is 4 degrees right across Venus, and the Chiron is right across Mercury. So the Mercury is really being affected by Chiron, and the Venus is really being affected by Pluto. And Venus-Pluto is usually somebody who feels or has been taught to feel inadequate socially. They're wallflowers. They're not comfortable on the social level. When Pluto's opposite your sun, oftentimes you have a sense of identity that's low. We don't know why. Pluto opposite the moon is really very difficult to interpret. It often shows up power struggles with the mother or emotional problems. A lot of times it does because the mother doesn't give the child a healthy division. Mom's here and the child's here. Pluto opposite Mercury can be the person being made to feel inadequate mentally. Opposite Venus, inadequate socially. Opposite Mars, it can be emasculation. So Pluto oppositions are like kind of looking up a mountain at all the power. So I think that really what underlies Mr. McConnell is a sense of feeling less than, and the Pluto and the Leo planets here make him overcompensate. This is a theory that you'll see tremendously expressed consistently in Arroyo's books about how negative aspects are oftentimes that way because the person is overreacting to it and the dark side comes out. But what matters here is not just this opposition, but the T-square to the moon in Taurus. So you know that the moon in Taurus is exalted there. It's very powerful. It's very grounded. This guy's got all 4 hoofs dug in. You're not going to push him around. But I was thinking today, I don't know of any politician in history that has more pursed lips in history. Have you ever seen anybody that's more? At all times. At all times. I happen to believe there's a lot of money being snuck into these people's bank accounts in Switzerland that you don't know about, but that's my opinion. If you want to get a real good heads up on what's really happening, I really suggest the book called The Economic Hitman. Did you read it? The Economic Hitman by John Perkins. He was a former CIA operative, and he went in and took over these other countries to take over their economies. And he saw the light one day, and he turned against them. Has been exposing them. This book tells you exactly how we own these other countries and usurp their minerals and get them indebted to us. And The Economic Hitman by John Perkins. Yeah, good old Susan's putting it in the chat. Okay, so getting back to his chart. Now, what's going to happen that's so shocking here is Uranus is going to go into Scorpio. Let me get that right. Uranus is going to go into Taurus. Uranus is going to go into Taurus, I think it's May 15th next year. And when it does, even though all these very thick Taurus planets, energy moves to Taurus very slowly like molasses. It's going to take your Uranus 7 years going through here, and it'll hit one by one. But as soon as it hits Taurus on May 15th, there's going to be shockwaves with Mr. McConnell. Why? Why? It's very simple. Because Uranus is the planet of change and eruption, and he doesn't deal well with it, even though he's got 2 planets in Aquarius. It's going to be shocking to him, and I think it's very probable we're going to see his downfall at that time. Not because he's bad, but because he's inflexible. Because a Uranus transit is your insides wanting to change. We are so Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Yeah, thank you, Mark. You can look for that on Amazon. Uranus transits are tough because we understand intuitively that something has to remove the block so life force can come coursing through us in a new way. I don't care how conservative you are, you still have to be open to Uranus. And if you're not, you're going to start cracking, literally and figuratively. Now, let's go back to his. When is that Uranus happening? It's May 8th or May 15th. One of them is the date of the GOP's Neptune return, and the other one is the date of Uranus entering Taurus, which is going to really shake up the fixed signs. So we see another thing I want to show you is this, and I want to use a regular chart to show you because a lot of you don't know this. I want to show you how this works. Here's the transits right now, okay? Here's the transits right now. This is how you read a standard chart if you're doing standard astrology. If a person were born right now or 7/13 tonight, they would have a sun in Scorpio in the 6th house. They would have a moon in Aries in the 12th house. They would have the moon conjunct Uranus. They would have Mercury in Scorpio in the 6th house. But we haven't talked about, and I focus on them, and I try not to do it with novices because it's overwhelming. You need to look, like people ask me questions a lot of times. If my 2nd house of money has nothing in it, does that mean I'm going to have no money? It's not what it means. It doesn't matter at all if a house is empty because you look to the ruler of the cusp. You notice how the sign of Gemini is on the cusp of the 2nd house. Remember, houses are different than signs. So Mercury rules Gemini. Mercury rules Gemini for all people at all times. So the way you would say this is Mercury in Scorpio in the 6th house is the ruler of his 2nd house. Mercury in Scorpio is the ruler of his 6th house. So anytime something hits his Mercury by transit or whatever, it's going to affect his 2nd house because Mercury is the ruler of all 2nd house happenings. In other words, the moon. The moon in Aries is the ruler of his 3rd house because Cancer is on the cusp. What planet rules Cancer? The moon. Where is the moon? The moon is in Aries. So the moon in Aries is the ruler of the 3rd house. What about the home? 4th house, home. Nothing there except the node. The sun in Scorpio rules Leo. Therefore, the sun in Scorpio rules this person's 4th house. That's thorough standard astrology. I do some of it, not a lot of it, but I do some of it because I find other constructs to be much more powerful and indicative. Now, going back to Mitch, the reason I brought this up is I noticed that, let me get this straight. Yeah, I'm losing it for now. I can't find it. I found something with Saturn. Saturn and Sag. Okay. Okay. Here's what it is. Saturn is right here right now, and Saturn is entering his eighth house. And even though this is a noon chart, Saturn in his eighth house is going to be very significant because the eighth house of a master politician like this is going to have everything to do with funding, cutting off funding, difficulty with budgets, especially somebody with 4 planets in Taurus. I think, it's my personal opinion, you don't have to believe me, but I think he's very money driven because of the Taurus planets. I could be wrong, but astrologically, you got to be very careful before you jump your gun. Now let's go on to tonight's subjects that were posted to you, and I'll see if I can remember that other transit I saw with him. Tonight, the main story is Manafort. Okay, this is a remarkable chart. Sun in Aries, Mars in Aries, Venus in Aries, Mercury in Aries, Moon in Taurus. You have all 5 personal planets in the first 2 signs. This is usually somebody who's very, very myopic. They're very self-contained. They can be very selfish, not always, because Ramdas has a lot of Aries and a lot of Pisces, and so does James Hillman and a lot of our wonderful Joseph Campbell, wonderful theorists, philosophers. But with someone like this, you got to put your warning signs out. This person can be extremely greedy and selfish, just like is it Martin Skeckel? That how you say the guy's name, John? What's his name? Skeckel?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
The guy, big pharma guy, the young guy with with a smirk on his face.
Pharma Bro.
Pharma Bro, yeah.
Shkreli, I think it is. Shkreli, I think. You know who I mean.
Yeah, but his name is Skeckel, I think something.
No, it's Skeckel.
Who's that? Let's go to Mars.
Martin Shkreli.
Okay, we're close enough.
Shkreli.
Okay, I butchered enough of that. Okay. But anyhow, he's like all Aries planets and Taurus planets too. Now, you can have an Aries chart with Neptune opposite and be fine. You could absolutely be a wonderful, wonderful person. But that dark side of this is you're a big time con man. This Neptune is 13, opposite the Sun, opposite Mars, opposite Venus, loosely opposite Mercury, you might say. I treat all 4 of these planets as if they are one stellium, even though I break the rules. But the temptation here is, since I'm the only one that matters, I can do anything I want. This is like a cat. You ever see a cat hide behind a tree that's this thin? They think they're hidden, you know? That's what this chart's like. And all of a sudden, he's found out. That's what I was looking at. It was this chart. So what we're looking at here, in 3 weeks, I think it's Kennedy assassination day, November 22nd, Saturn will be here. Saturn will be right here at 2650. 3 weeks from now, it will be opposite his Uranus. And even though this is a noon chart, Uranus is the ruler of any house that's got Aquarius on the cusp. So you're going to get comeuppance. Saturn is opposing Uranus, ruler of his 8th house, because Aquarius is on the cusp. So I think what Mr. Manafort is doing, he's heading straight forward towards a cold piece of cement called Mr. Mueller. And this is the main thing that's bringing him down at this time. This person has the capacity, and I'm going to tell you something, This is really clear after tons of research. The reason fire signs get away with murder, so to say, the reason Aries do, especially Sagittarians and Leos, the reason they get away with stuff that other signs can't get away of is because they believe they're right. They don't believe that they should get any repercussions. They believe they deserve it. And that takes a person a long way towards how things manifest around them. You'll find it unbelievable when people have a lot of Sag planets, and you keep thinking, boy, the comeuppance has got to come soon, and it doesn't come. This guy's case, very intriguing, because the Saturn is going to oppose the Uranus, which is the part of you that's free and gallivanting around to the Cayman Islands and opening up all the passports and opening up all these applications for this and that. But you got to remember what's happening here. You can't get too focused on Mr. Manafort at this time. Maybe not in the past, maybe not in the future. At this time, Manafort's chart is acting as an avatar to us. He's symbolic of what's happening to the ugly American. Maybe just for a time period. You have to become very flexible when you read. It doesn't mean he was an avatar before, and it certainly doesn't mean all avatars are good. They can be avatars of different types of archetypes. But this, symbolically, think of what I'm going to say and then think about it nationwide. Archetypally, this means just keeping your own self-interest is going to take you far. Well, that ain't going to work anymore. See how it's happening to us and his chart. So what's happening to him through all these cases, and whether we get towards Trump or not, whatever with Russia, it's symbolic that this type of selfish bottom line mentality is not going to take you far. Or other people are calling it the end of capitalism. There's all kinds of things that you can say. So very intriguing chart. Let's go on and see what we dig up with the rest of them. Like I say, I'm very cautious to say a lot about people until I get the birth time. The birth time is just so important. And if you look at Ram Dass and you look at Hillman and you look at Jefferson and so many of them, Michelangelo, so many of them were Aries, with a lot of Neptune with them. And the reason they can be so successful is because they got so much Aries, which is unimpeded. Other charts like Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Scorpio were so complex that we follow our Neptune, we follow our Uranus, we follow universal planets, but it gets so caught up in the web of our complexity of our mind. Well, with all these Aries planets, you see this wonderful cosmic feeling, you head right for it. Oh, there's Nirvana, let's go there. Oh, there's Nirvana, let's go there. You all saw Michael Weir on this show, our regressive hypnotist. By the way, I'm reminded later this month will be the second appearance of Reverend Greg Keene. I think it's around November 30th. I'll let you know. But Greg Keene will be back with us on this show. But when I had Michael Weir on this show, the regressive hypnotist from Pittsburgh, Michael is the Pisces with a lot of Aries. And when you get regressed by Michael, Michael doesn't take you back to this step. He doesn't take you back to this lifetime. He doesn't take you back to 4 lifetimes ago. Here you are, he takes you right back to God. He just goes, whoop, right back there. And it's a hard leap to make because it's such a dramatic shift in consciousness. But the point is, when you have a lot of early planets and a lot of late planets, or a lot of early signs, a lot of late signs, it can work greatly to your benefit because the personal planets aren't hung up on anything. They're not worried about stepping on toes. They just go right for it, and the outer planets are very pure call. I can't remember what Gabron was. I believe Gabron was a Capricorn. And some of our great poets have this ability. The ability to access, like the great poets, that is a Neptune skill that requires a very open channel. Who am I reading? Rumi. Rumi is an example of a tremendous soul of Neptune. Neptune allows you to see past the mirage of separateness and into the essence of things. Sometimes the inner planet is so weak it can't handle it. Sometimes it can. A lot of times people have so much outer planet activity that they can't communicate. Some of that happened with Hendrix. Hendrix, if you ever listen to him talk, he just made no sense. But he had great outer planet connectivity. You see it with Dylan. Dylan's got great outer planet connectivity, but he can't always express what it means, so he gives it the Gemini treatment, which is to make light of it, make fun of it. So let's go back and study some more here. So with Mr. Manafort, we see that the chart is coming to light. It's no wonder that the current stuff has been unraveling with him with the recent new moon at 25 of Libra, which was right on the south node. He does have a grand trine with Sun and Pluto and Chiron. But the main thing, without a doubt, is looking at the Neptune opposite at least 3 of these planets. And if this is unchecked and if the person's not brought up correctly, this can really be a con artist, somebody who's all smoke and mirrors, and somebody who's being found out. Okay, next on the list, let's see who's here. Don Jr., Donald Trump Jr. These are the players in that June 8th meeting. Now, I was talking with Liza last night about this. Can you imagine being raised by Donald Trump Sr.? I mean, it certainly explains Saturn and Virgo, but I would imagine, just from reading between the lines, that he would be judged all the time on his behavior and how he looks and how he talks, and he's got to be just like Daddy. I see a soul who's crushed. I don't know about you. I see a soul who's crushed under someone else's personality. Now, this Jupiter out here at 29, opposite Mercury and opposite Venus, gives him the ability somewhat to kind of put on a show of being upbeat, but I don't believe it. I think it's superficial. This Pluto square the Sun, I think, is extremely significant of growing up with Daddy, the powerhouse. Put the Sun on the first house, it puts Pluto up top. So I think he grew up with a very demanding father, demanding circumstances. And I don't think in this situation, the Mercury-Neptune opposite Jupiter helps. This, to me, it's not always, but this, more than half the time, people with Mercury-Neptune are liars. More than half the time. I've seen them where they tell truth and they're fine. And they can be incredibly intuitive, but I've seen an awful lot of alcoholics with this, especially in Sag, and the Neptune causes alcoholism. I've seen a lot of flat out liars. And when you got the Jupiter Neptune, that's wide, it's 13 degrees. Anyhow, the Jupiter is opposite Mercury. And that gives you the tendency to exaggerate. But I don't find a law here. I feel kind of sorry for this guy with the Sun in Capricorn, with the strong moon in Virgo, with the Saturn in Virgo, with the Pluto square the sun, with the Venus in Capricorn, I think that he's just afraid to move out of his box the way he's been trained. It's just how I see it. Let's move on. Who's next? Kushner. I've been seeing some photographs of Kushner. Kushner really creeps me out. I don't have his birth time and I really need it. But I've studied the best and the worst of Scorpios. This guy's a Capricorn, just like Junior. He's a Capricorn, moon in Pisces. But this guy gives off the Capricorn facade. You're not going to see inside. You're not going to look inside. And that facade is so strong that it rings doorbells in my house. There's just no way I would trust this guy about anything. I just don't get a human response. I get a cold response. Well, these are my hunches. You've got Venus, Neptune. Could be a smooth talker. Could also be very romantic. I don't know. You got the 3 planets in Libra, so you can play the social game. You got the moon in Pisces, which I don't think, even though it's square to Neptune, I don't think the moon in Pisces is very active. I have seen so many people, I don't know. Could be. I have seen so many people with the moon in Pisces shock you with their behavior because the moon in Pisces is very weak. And what I mean by that, it's overwhelmed by the rest of the chart so much more than another moon, like a moon in Taurus or a moon in Aries, a moon in Leo. Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
My read on that would be that it would make it, he would read people's emotions, he would feel people's emotions, and he would be able to read a room and manipulate people emotionally.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah. But I'm talking about, you don't see the moon in Pisces where they're very sensitive and they want to pick up all the loose puppies and take them home, and they're so afraid to hurt anybody's feelings. I get the opposite, and I have found, like with Joseph Mengele and some horrible people had the moon in Pisces. Many of them. And it's not the moon in Pisces that does it. It's the moon's inability to fight off the other planets. Because the moon is so permeable. It's so open to influences. Like if it's got Pluto square to it, the moon becomes the dark side of moon in Scorpio. Anyhow, let me go back to it. Hi, Alki. How are you feeling?
I'm all right.
All right.
I got big bags under my eyes from bawling my head off all the time, but I'm good.
You hang in there. All right, we're going to go back here to Jared's chart. Jared's chart is sneakily simple. I don't believe the simplicity I'm looking at. The Chiron and Taurus. I've noticed people with Chiron and Taurus, when it's in a bucket handle position, to be very much accumulators of money, or buying country clubs, or buying businesses, or buying cars, or buying coins. They're going to collect. That's what Chiron and Taurus does. Because in their mind, they're safeguarding their life by building up a wall around them of stuff. Now, this guy's chart would be changed at least 50% by the proper birth time, but a lot of these famous folks, we just can't get it. Mueller. Talk about an important player right now. In a sense, Robert Mueller is really carrying part of the collective with him now because he's really responsible. Saturn in Cancer. He's really responsible for the people's voice being able to fight against all this corruption. Okay, you see he's a lunar person. I believe the moon is in Aries. Now, since you have a noon chart, the moon does move 13 degrees a day. The moon can be anywhere from 6 degrees back at 22, all the way to about 4 or 5 of Aries. So if his moon were in Aries, he would be born about after 2 p.m., something like that. Because the moon moves a degree every 2 hours. So we guess, and since it's a 29, you have to ask yourself, does this guy seem to be more like moon in Pisces, or does he seem more like moon in Aries? Well, what the immediate thing I get with him, he has a long face. That's a Sagittarian quality. That elongated face like John Kerry has is a Sagittarian quality. So we could possibly guess and move Sagittarius up to here and give him Sagittarius rising and look and see these planets would fall in the 8th house, which would make sense. But guessing at rising signs is a very dangerous proposition. You must be very careful. So look at what he does have, Miss Karen. The reason I point to Karen is Karen has a lot of Leo Virgo. This guy's got a lot of Leo Virgo. And from what you hear about Mueller, he's very proud. He's going to follow to the letter of the law, and that's what makes me think he's got the moon in Aries. He's going right after it. He's going after the truth. He doesn't seem vindictive. He doesn't seem overly emotional, but you're not going to deter him, mainly because he's really proud of how his work is, how pristine his work is. That's the Leo-Virgo combination. He's got the sun near Pluto, 6 degrees apart. I don't mess with people with Sun Pluto unless I have to. But he's got this powerful T-square to Saturn in Cancer. When you have a strong Saturn in Cancer, you've got somebody who's not going to show his or her feelings easily. He may have a great big barrier up against his feelings, but it would be worth gold to find out what house that Saturn in Cancer really is at. But in this chart, it's interesting to find that it comes out in the 9th house of law in legal matters. So the main thing that you're going to find, you cannot analyze Mueller's chart, even with the proper birth time, without first looking at what's happening in the United States chart. Because the United States chart is being forced to face some truths, and one of the ways it's doing is through Mr. Mueller. So what's the big thing that we see? What would that T-square depend on time of birth with that moon? Yes. Well, the moon's position changes with the time of birth. The T-square doesn't change that much, except one of the legs of it moves a little bit. But the rising sign changes. Anyhow, what I'm saying to you is the big thing that's happening in the United States chart are all the Pluto oppositions. Neptune's, we think, squaring the ascendant, if we know what the ascendant is. Neptune's squaring the ascendant. And one of the things I think that's one of the most indicative things about Mr. Mueller now. Neptune has been squaring the United States ascendant ever since the weapons of mass destruction myth, chemical warfare myths. These are all Neptunian. Now that Neptune is moving on, when Neptune moves on after the exact positioning, it's a catastrophic time because you go, oh my God, I've been on that cloud. And a lot of people were warned about this past election about getting into a cult, which I think is pretty fair to say we've had. I don't know why so many times I talk about anti-Trump and people think I'm pro-Hillary. I'm anti-Hillary too. I want pro somebody's going to tell us the truth. That's my opinion. Anyhow, I'm not pro Hillary. So as the Neptune fog lifts, what do you think happens? The flashlight comes into the closet. When the Neptune fog lifts, we start to see the truth. That's what Mueller is doing. Did you have something to say, Karen?
Yeah, I have a real problem. I put a man through law school, and I know what the ethics are that an attorney's supposed to have. And the basic ethics are that you are to avoid at all times the appearance of wrongdoing. In other words, some of the stuff that's coming out, and I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I'm saying when you stand back and look, there's a question about ethically, is he a biased person? Is he a prejudiced person? And we have people on the Supreme Court who have sat and ruled on cases where you could stand back and say, there's an ethics issue here because of da-da-da-da-da. And
Well, how can you evaluate Mr. Mueller's ethics?
Well, first of all, it's well proven that he's good friends with Comey, no matter what you think about the situation. And see, you can look like that, but the other side of that is there is a question about jobs he's had in the past, some things that are coming up. Where are his ethics? You know, I don't know. I can't judge the man, but I can tell you that having put someone through law school and having known how strong it was when he went through, we've lost a lot of those ethics in our legal system.
No doubt about it. Well, I think that's a valid point until we find out. I think it's a valid line of questioning, and it furthermore explains Neptune. When Neptune's around, you're uncertain of everything, especially ethics. Yes. Everybody's unsure. That's Neptune.
Mm-hmm. I
you have a good point.
I really question that on both sides. I mean, I'm not throwing stones at one way or the other. I just see a lot of ethical issues with the attorneys across the board.
Well, I think you got a good point. And I think if you're a foreigner looking at America, I think the foreigners are looking at us and wondering if we have any.
Yeah, and if we have two sets of laws.
Well, we keep screaming about democracy, and we keep seeing how the elections are being fixed. So we got to go way, way back to ground zero. Thank you, Karen. I'm going to move on. You have a good point. Okay. Hi, Suzanne. Okay, let's get back to this chart. I don't know the man. All I can say is this guy is the epitome of Saturn in Cancer. And Saturn in Cancer can be very troublesome. It can be. But one of the sides that you can count on is he's going to protect the Union. He's going to do what he thinks to protect. It's a very conservative symbol. He's going to protect the integrity of the country. Now that combined with his Leo planets, I hope to God we don't have an ethical problem with him. And if we do, then he needs to go. Let's move on. Next is Carter Page. Let's see here. Carter Page. All right. Didn't show up. All right. That's why I got a monitor. Okay. Carter Page really gives off this Gemini. If you've watched him interviewed, he really gives off this Gemini nature of changeability inside his mind. I know he's very bright and he's an oil executive, an oil consultant, which is the perfect job for Gemini as consultants. Notice the 3 planets in Taurus. This is really, really powerful here. I'm going to give you the word I get. You get your own word. The word I get is very squirrely. I got a feeling like, where is he? I can't find out where he is. His words don't match his body language. But anyhow, that's very much indicated by a moon next to Uranus. And remember, this moon could be at 9. It could be over at 17. We don't know once again. The farther it is, the weaker it is. So I happen to think the moon is very close to Uranus because you get a very strong sense. When people have very strong Uranus in their chart, you get a feeling of their inner self is vibrating. The inner self is vibrating. It's really a hard planet to channel in a smooth fashion. Now, you have to study this 5-planet opposition very closely. Jupiter, Neptune in Sag, 0, 1 degree, almost exact. This is somebody with a tremendous interest in spirit. It doesn't mean it's out there. It doesn't mean he's aware of it. But this is a very highly spiritual combination, and in Sagittarius, highly principled. Right across the zodiac, Saturn. Okay, now I'm not even going to bring in Mercury, Venus, but this is very fascinating. I've seen this a lot. Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn. What I've found with people like this is their past life, they felt, it doesn't matter what they were, but they felt or they experienced belief, non-belief, believe it, non-believe it. I'll see it when I believe it. I believe it when I see it. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Show it to me, I don't see it. Just going back and forth, going back and forth. I have faith, I don't have faith. Just this marvelous tension going on between these two things. I need more faith. And you see the person takes this lifetime to draw those kind of experiences to them where they're going to bust through and finally win the war and in favor of the Jupiter Neptune, which is in a godlike combination. But what happens so many times with Saturn opposite Jupiter Neptune is the person can totally flip. They can totally flip, and they have it out for anybody that's got these higher principles. They can go to the dark side very easily because it's easy to favor that Saturn, especially with 3 planets in Taurus all together. They can, as Arroyo teaches us, you can personify one part of the opposition, then personify this, then personify this, then personify this, like a yo-yo, back and forth. Or sometimes this triplicate just wins. But it's very, very complicated. Very complicated. And when planets come in and start to square it from here or from here, you're going to see tremendous shakeup in the personality. So one good thing we could do with Mr. Page is to go back in his history, especially and find out when Uranus was here, what happened? I'm sorry, over here. When Uranus was here, what happened? When it was around 28 degrees of Aquarius. That would have been about 2008. What happened then? I guarantee you when any planet gets here and squares all 5 of these, you have massive, massive shift taking place. It's not really a bucket pattern with Mars over here. Intriguing chart. This is again somebody you got to at least put it on the front burner and look at it. This is somebody who's really driven by finance. Okay? We don't know how much. We don't know if he's legit or not. We don't know these things, but we see indications. And we also see what? This is 5 degrees away. This is 6 degrees away. So that Mercury is sitting right in the middle of the Venus-Saturn opposition. Here it is. Mercury is 1/4 of a degree away from the exact midpoint between Venus and Saturn. Well, what do you think the Venus and Saturn midpoint is about? It's not a happy midpoint. Each of these midpoints have their definition. It's somebody who can be very locked up socially. Usually Venus and Taurus people are very pleasant, but Venus next to Saturn brings in a grumpy quality. And you put Mercury right there, this person could be very gruff if they had to be. Let's move on. Stone. I don't need to say much. It is shocking to find that Mr. Stone is a Virgo, but you can certainly see the Leo pouring out of this guy. Look at this T-square. The Jupiter opposite the moon in Scorpio, and you can definitely sense the moon in Scorpio. But all that energy from Jupiter opposite Mars and Jupiter opposite the moon, all that energy pours out into, let's look closely, 20, 24, 29. It doesn't hit the Mercury so much, it hits the Pluto. Okay? Because the midpoint of this is around 24, something like that. And this is almost 22. So this Pluto in Leo is greatly exaggerated. Greatly exaggerated. Who do we know with Pluto and Leo right on the midheaven? Mr. Putin. So these are powerful personalities. And it takes this kind of energy to pull them away from the norm. The Virgo energy, the Virgo archetype doesn't want to go away from the norm. Virgos have short hair. Virgos are polite. They don't do outrageous things. They don't wear outrageous clothes, outrageous glasses. People with strong Leo tendencies do. Flair. So I don't have much to say about this chart other than the fact that he's very intense. You don't fool with this guy. He's very strong, and he's got a very powerful Pluto. And a guy with a strong Pluto like this, you don't want to play king of the hill with this guy, because he's going to be hard to unearth. Okay, so that is my take on all of them. I missed most of the chat comments because I just can't do both. I will change this now. I'm going to stop the recording on YouTube just because it'll give us a little more freedom to talk. For those of you listening, you can go to my webpage, which is starself.com, STARSCLF.com. And there you'll find the link if you want to join us each Thursday night at 8 o'clock p.m. No, I did not do Mr. Lewandowski. I've done him before, but I did the ones I could get my hands on. Bye, YouTubers, from all us unpluggers.